Hey everybody, welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Dan Labbe, Mary Kay Cabot, Ashley Bastock. It is a Tuesday. It's about 3:20 recording this today. We're going to look a little bit at the Browns roster as we're through the first week of free agency, look at some areas where maybe they need to upgrade, where we think they might be okay, where they might need to really focus on adding guys in the draft. I put up a roster reset on Tuesday morning that kind of went through position by position, and I kind of ranked it as like, hey, this is a need where they have to draft somebody on the first 2 days. Of course, Mary Kay has taken away one of our day two draft picks, so she can take 2 quarterbacks in the first round. But whatever, it is what it is. We'll figure it out. Some others were positions of need where they probably need to draft somebody. They can wait till day 3, and some other positions they're actually doing okay. We're going to skip quarterback because we all know about that. I think the first position I want to bring up, and it's one we talk about a lot, is wide receiver. And I think we've talked about this before too, that it always feels like, Ashley, you've pointed this out. It always feels like the Browns value their wide receiving core maybe more than we do. Now look, Jerry Jeudy really good. The hard part is doing it again. I think I'm pretty confident he can, as long as they have the right quarterback. But Mary Kay, when you look at the state of this wide receiver room, so these are the names after Jerry Jeudy: David Bell, Caden Davis. I don't remember Caden Davis, the one game he played. Jamari Thrash, Cedric Tillman, and Michael Woods. So this is a group that I think, if we're looking at day 2 of the draft or a trade down on day 1, this is a group where I really think the Browns need to add somebody there who can compete. I think they need to add somebody who can compete with Cedric Tillman at number 2. And I think they need to add somebody on day 3 who's kind of fast, shifty, slot guy, adds a little versatility. Obviously, there's some of their own free agents still out there, like Elijah Moore, but I think this is a really important position group in the draft.
I think so too. In fact, so important that I'll just give up my idea on taking the quarterback at the end of round 1 to
You can't. It's too soon. It hasn't even been 24 hours. You can't give it up yet.
Just kidding. Yeah, I definitely think that this is an important position to add to. But I don't know if they feel the same way about it as I do and you guys do. I just don't know if they feel that way. I think they're so high on Cedric Tillman that they believe that he can be a bona fide number 2 receiver. And then David Njoku is another key pass catcher for them. So I think they look at it like they have 3 really amazing weapons, and that they don't necessarily need to go out. They didn't need to go out and buy one in free agency. They haven't made any move to necessarily trade for one. I don't know that Andrew really likes to pay 2 receivers, but that's a reason why you would want to get one on a rookie contract. So I am drafting a receiver in this draft, and second round would probably be a good place to get one. If not, then you might want to think about the third round, but we all know how the third round receivers go around these parts. Although Cedric Tillman was a third round receiver, and he's doing a pretty nice job. So yes, I'm all in at the receiver position and or tight end.
Yeah, and it's not that I don't want to see what Ced Tillman can do, because there was something there last year. There was that little stretch when Jameis was in there and Ced put up some numbers, and then he got hurt and missed the 6 games with a concussion, which, as you pointed out, Mary Kay, is certainly something to be concerned about when a player misses that many games with a concussion. But Ashley, it's every year we just have this same conversation about the receivers. Like, hey, the Browns need a bunch of receivers, and then the Browns don't do anything, which seems to tell me they just don't view it the same way we do.
Yeah, and I think once again that is a mistake, and you started to go down that road, Dan, because that's what I was going to bring up. I think with Ced, you have to be concerned now about this concussion. And look, we know oftentimes with guys, if you get another concussion, it can sometimes take longer. I mean, I think that's the typical path. It will take guys, the more they get, longer potentially to come back and get through the protocol. Now, obviously, it's not a given that he's going to get another concussion, but it is something to think about because he missed a lot more time than I think any of us were anticipating. And even like we'd see him out there at practice as a part of the protocol, and he just couldn't get over those final hurdles. So I do think that's something to be concerned about. David Njoku went through a slew of lower body injuries last year. And again, I mean, David Njoku's not getting any younger. Obviously, he's still young comparatively when you think about all the time he's had in the league already. But you start to worry about the fact that, okay, he was hurt more. It wasn't building on that amazing 2023 season. I mean, I think it was certainly a sort of down anomaly year for him, but I 1000% think it would be such a mistake to not add some young talent at both of these spots. But again, I do think I worry because I'm like, they haven't had much success doing that later in the draft. And I think just kind of knowing some other needs, I would be considering pass catchers more in probably like the third round or later at this point, because I'd rather them get other things in the first and second round.
Yeah, and some of it depends too on like, would there be a run on receivers in the first round? I mean, there's a few guys that I like who would be second round guys that I'm seeing all of a sudden pop into the first round after the combine. So some of that too is going to determine what they do if they wait till the third. So let's have the David Njoku discussion. Let's play all the hits right off the top. We're talking receiver room. We're talking David Njoku. People who have listened to this pod know my relationship with David Njoku. They know how I've viewed him as a player. But that being said, he is a productive player, and he has been a productive tight end for this football team. Whether he's reached his ceiling or not at this point, he has been productive. I'm going to be honest. Last year scared me a little bit, Mary Kay, because he's, as Ashley mentioned, he is getting older. He's 29 now. He's coming up on 30. He's played a lot of football games at a very physical position. He never, even before the injuries, he never quite looked like David. He never quite looked like that guy that we're used to seeing in the spring and in training camp. And then the injuries started happening, and it seemed like it really slowed him down. He still did score, 5 touchdowns, so he got in the end zone. But he just didn't look like David Njoku last year for various reasons. And that worries me a little bit. That makes me a little nervous about David. So is he going to come back, on a revenge tour, David Njoku, this year? Or are we going to look back at last year as like the start of the decline of David Njoku?
Well, if I recall correctly, he suffered that high ankle sprain really early on. I'm looking it up again. I can't.
It was really early. I don't remember the exact week, but it was early.
So it was week 3 or something like that. So from week 3 on, he was never really himself after that. He missed 4 games right off the jump with the high ankle sprain. And then I think he probably tried to come back like they all do, maybe a little sooner than they actually should. So actually, he was inactive for games 2, 3, and 4. So he did that in the opener, and then he missed the next 3 games. So he just got off to a very rocky start, and he never recovered from that. And then he also had a knee injury, and it just, those 2 things, I think, derailed his season. It was a very, very erratic season for him. But I think the high ankle sprain really kind of did him in a little bit, because I don't think he was really necessarily ready to come back, but knew the team needed him, and then did what he had to do to get out there. So I am going to attribute his very erratic season to injuries, or a large part of his erratic season to injuries. He was not himself in the locker room. He was not himself on the field. It was just a different and weird year for David Njoku. I talked to him on Radio Row at the Super Bowl. He was fired up. He was pumped up. He said that he is healthy. He's ready to go. He plans on rebounding this season. At the day that I talked to him, he was all about talking to Myles Garrett and trying to talk him into coming back, thinking that they're very close and that they just need the quarterback. So we'll see how it goes. He had the ankle, but then he was also a victim of just a messed up offense in the first 7 games of the season.
Yeah, and I'll give David credit. He's like the eternal optimist when it comes to the Cleveland Browns now. He's like, I mean, it was at a softball game last year. He told us the offense was going to be fireworks, and he's pumping. He's always ready to pump this team up and pump his quarterback up. Ashley, I think what it does, whatever we think David's going to do next year, I think it does underscore the fact that this is one of those positions where they've got to get younger and they've got to add something because David's not going to be here forever, even if he does bounce back. So again, in a very deep draft, and we're giving away those second and third round picks really quickly here. But in a deep draft, this offers an opportunity for them to maybe get younger and add kind of that next guy in line.
It does. I mean, I think even before I did my first mock draft, like I had them getting a tight end in the end of the third round or the fourth round, like somewhere around there. I think there's going to be some guys who are going to be able to play, but in my time covering them, it just feels like they've never really got consistent production outside of David. I mean, obviously Harrison Bryant ended up leaving in free agency a couple of years ago, so that didn't quite pan out. And then you got a veteran in Jordan Akins. And I mean, I thought Jordan did some good things. I thought he looked better in 2024 than 2023. But the problem is they were so bad. It kind of like just goes under the radar, and he's older anyway. So I think you do just need to have somebody coming up behind David working their way through the ranks. And when you have a deep class, like you not only need to take advantage, but it's going to be, I think, fairly easy to take advantage when you have 10 picks still.
Yeah, and with some of these positions, it's so, like running back, for example. I think they should draft a running back, but there's going to be so many guys that are sitting there on day 3 who I think can be really good players in the right scheme. I mentioned Trevor Etienne on yesterday's pod. There's other guys in that day 3 group that like these guys could be pretty good. So you don't necessarily have to get one of the Ohio State backs. It would be great, but you don't have to get one of those guys. You could get a really good back later in this draft and, put him with Jerome Ford. Maybe Nick Chubb ends up coming back, put him with a little group of running backs there and you'd be okay. I want to talk about the offensive line because I was a little surprised by this when I went through the offensive line. Now I know I'm saying this after the Browns had a very highly rated tackle in for one of their 30 visits. I'm actually not as concerned about the offensive line as I thought I would be because you're set from left to right starting at Joel. So you got Joel, Ethan Posick, Wyatt Teller, Jack Conklin, right? And this is all assuming they're healthy. But when those 4 are healthy, they're good. It sounds like DeJuan Jones is going to be the first guy up there at left tackle. I'd like him to add a little competition for DeJuan. I think adding a guy like Cornelius Lucas, a good veteran tackle, if you need to, you can throw him in there. They kind of have this stable of veterans that they can turn to in a pinch to bring in and start if injuries start to pile up, like a Jaron Christian or all these guys, these names that we've learned over the last few years. You hope your new offensive line coach is a little bit better. I'm not opposed to taking a guy at left tackle, Mary Kay, if they think he's like going to be their left tackle for the next 10 years. But I actually strangely feel okay about the state of this offensive line right now, with the caveat that left tackle is still a question mark.
Well, I've actually been feeling okay about this offensive line for most of the offseason, talking about how they've got 3 all-pros on their offensive line. How many teams can say that? And of course, Joel's getting up there a little bit, but I think he can still play at a very, very high level. I think Jack, who restructured his contract and is definitely coming back, is someone who will be better in his second year out from major reconstructive knee surgery. So I do think that the offensive line is very, very solid. Again, as you mentioned, the only question mark is at left tackle. And that is because DeJuan is coming off of a cleanup, a little scope of his MCL surgery from 2023. He also broke his fibula. So he hasn't really demonstrated yet that he can stay healthy. And so we have to see how that goes. But that's why they have Cornelius Lucas. And if they have to, I've said this before, if they have to do it, they can move Jack Conklin over to left tackle, especially now that, once again, he will be stronger this year than he was last year, presumably. And so if they needed him over there on the left side and they could put someone else on the right side, whether it be Cornelius or DeJuan, I think they have a little bit of flexibility there too. And yes, I do think it probably is a good year to try to go ahead and draft another tackle of the future. And we know that the Browns put equal weight on their left tackle and their right tackle. So either way, they really could use one more really good one.
And here's the good news too. I've been thinking about this because we've gotten to see DeJuan Jones a couple times. Ashley, you and I saw him at the Sports Awards. We actually were shooting our video the other day on Myles Garrett's press conference day. He walked out behind us. He looks good. Like just quick eyeball test. You could tell how much bigger he was last year when he came back from that injury. And I don't know what the official weight was. He pushed back on the report that came out at one point that said he was 415, but he knew he was definitely overweight. So regardless of what that was, at least just eyeballing it, Ashley, the 2 times we've seen him, he looks good. It looks like he's not putting on a bunch of weight and he's going to have to work back from that. So I think that's as good a sign as anything right now.
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, he obviously just worked, I thought, so hard to come back from that MCL last year. But when we watched him out there, the problem was, and we knew from talking to him, and then obviously from the fact that he had this cleanup scope, like he was never the best version of himself. And I think it was partly that. I think it was partly Bill Callahan wasn't there anymore. And obviously Andy Dickerson coaching this group didn't work out because Andy is gone and they have revamped the coaching staff there. So I do think he has looked good from when we've seen him. He's not on that scooter that we know that he was on when he broke the leg in New Orleans right after that. So, and obviously too, the other thing is I do think you have to be cognizant when it's a bigger guy like that getting lower body injuries and ending his season 2 years in a row. But the reality is a broken bone is kind of a freak injury. And those are so easy to come back from. Those guys talk about it all the time. Zach Zinter talked about it last year. By the time he was drafted, that was a gruesome injury he had in the Michigan-Ohio State game, the last game of his college career. He was ready for rookie minicamp. Like, they come back fairly quickly when you're not talking about ligament damage and things like that. So that's also something to keep in mind with this latest one for me.
Yeah, as long as that thing heals okay.
Yeah.
And heals fully, he should be okay. And there's no reason that it shouldn't at this point. So, okay, I'm kind of jumping all over, but I want to talk about this defensive line because when we talk about what they could do potentially with that number 33 pick, I think I've done 3 mocks and every time I've taken a different defensive end there. So, whether it was Donovan Ezerike, I think I'm saying that right. I gotta double check that one because I really like him. Landon Jackson, who I accidentally called Landon Donovan on yesterday's pod. I had soccer on the brain, but Landon Jackson is a guy. Nick Skirton's another guy. Like Mary Kay, there are guys there at 33 that I really like. But I'll just ask this: how do you feel about this edge rush group right now? With Myles obviously anchoring it. You've got Alex Wright coming back in a contract year off a season-ending injury. Isaiah McGuire showed a little bit of promise last year, especially towards the end of the year. You added Joe Tryon Shoyinka. I did nail that name. I feel okay, but I also feel like there is still Obo Okoronkwo. I should mention him. He did not have a great year last year, so you'd hope he would bounce back. I still feel like there are guys short there. And that's why I always kind of focus on that edge rusher on day 2 at some point. I feel like they're missing one guy there. Maybe it's like they need a legitimate number 2 guy. I don't know, but that's how I feel about that group.
Well, I've always been of the mind that you do need that number 2 guy that can approach double-digit sacks, someone that's going to go out there and get 9 sacks for you. But right now, it looks to me like the approach for them is more to have interior pass rush with Mike Hall and also with Malik Collins, and who they just signed in free agency. And then to also use more of a rotation on the other side of Myles with Isaiah and Alex and Obo and those guys. So it almost seems like they feel okay about how they're going to get to the quarterback with a bunch of those guys. But this is definitely a good defensive line draft. I would be out there looking for a really, really good pass rusher. I think you can get one later. Maybe the second round is the right place to get a pass rusher, but I think you can get one even later if you play your cards right. So I would be definitely looking for that. And, and I think the fact that you do have Alex coming off of the injury, I think that's going to really help. I mean, he had 5 sacks 2 seasons ago before he got injured last year. And that's trending in the right direction. I mean, you're getting to the point where you can get the 8 that you would want from that guy, the 8, the 9 that you can get from that guy. So I think he and Isaiah together might be able to get you where you want to go there. But I'm always still looking for that big weapon over there on the other side of Miles.
Yeah, I almost view it like corner. Just throw bodies at it. Ashley, I know you got to drop out here, but before you do, if you want to talk a little edge rusher,
yes, I always do.
Especially after they made Myles Garrett now the second highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. It just feels like if you could just add a guy on a nice cost-controlled contract who can come in and be productive, I would jump at that opportunity.
And it's killed me the last 3 drafts. They haven't been able to do this because there have been such good D-line classes. And I mean, I guess to some extent we did see them do it last year with Mike Hall because they took a guy with their first pick, but we haven't seen them be able to chase that first round talent. So I'm getting ready to do another mock draft, and I think this time I am going to have it flipped for what I did in my first one, where I had them taking Abdul Carter and then Jalen Milroe in the second round. This time I think I'm going quarterback in the first round, and then I'm going to get one of those second round edge rushers, which I think some of those guys there that are going to be left are going to be round 1 talent because you're picking at 33. So there's going to be somebody who falls in a deep class that is going to, I think, be able to be a starter and impact player right away. And they've never really had this opportunity these last few years to go out and chase that. They've done a decent job piecemealing things together with veterans opposite of Miles, but I would like them to get somebody younger who we know is going to be available to them for a while.
Okay, let's talk. So I think there's going to be a moment in the draft where we're going to get an answer to a question that we've been trying to figure out for months and months. And that is this Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah question. We just don't know what his outlook is for the 2025 season. The Browns are not telling us. They aren't giving us any indications. I have seen on his Instagram, he's in Africa. He's walking around, looks good, but obviously walking around and playing football are 2 very different things when we're talking about a neck injury. I feel like, Mary Kay, if we're sitting there on Friday night and the Browns grab a linebacker kind of high, if they really kind of prioritize that position, I think that's going to be a pretty good sign that they are very concerned about Jeremiah's future. If they don't, I mean, some of it's going to depend how the board falls, right? They stay true to their board. But if they don't, maybe that gives you a little hope. But I think this position is just so up in the air because it all hinges on JOK. Like Jordan Hicks, very good player. Devin Bush was a surprise last year, did a nice job. Mahmoud Diabate did a nice job, but I also don't think you want to overexpose either of those guys. I can't read this position because I just don't know what's going on with JOK.
Well, I think that, and this is the way that I have been writing it, I think they have to assume, and I think they are assuming, that he's not going to be ready at least to start the season, and that they have to proceed as though he's not going to be there for them this year, and anything that they get from him is a bonus. And if they put their eggs in that basket and expect him to be back and playing at a high level this season, they might be setting themselves up for a disappointment. So I think they just have to move on without him. I don't mean to be cold or crass by saying that. The most important thing is his health, of course. So I think that they have to move forward as though they're not going to have him and plan accordingly at the position. And if that means drafting a linebacker high, I mean, he was sort of a hybrid kind of guy. He's not an easy player to replace because of all the different things that he can do. But I think that they need to find somebody that can help replace him. Now, as you mentioned, Devin Bush stepped in, did a nice job. Tony Fields, when they draft Tony Fields, they looked at him and viewed him almost as a poor man's JOK. So maybe he can step it up a little bit this year into a little bit more of a role. So they have some pieces, but they don't have a JOK. And if you see one of those guys somewhere in this draft, then I think you have to grab him. And once again, of course, everyone is hoping against hope that JOK can come back and that he can come back this season. But I haven't heard anything that gives me confidence that they even feel that way. I know he hasn't been cleared for football activity for the start of the offseason program coming up next month. And it starts to barrel at you after that. Before you know it, you're in mini camp. And then all of a sudden you're having your little break and then you're back for, I mean, it just goes really fast. So at this point, I think that they just have to spin it forward, and whatever they get is a bonus.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is one of those situations where there's the personal side, but then there is also the football side. And, we talk about both. And obviously, from the personal side, we want JOK to be healthy. We'd love to see him back on the field, but just personally, you want him to be healthy and safe and be able to live the rest of his life. He's gotten that extension. He's made money. Like, that part of it we all want for him, but on the football side of it, you do have to try and make that evaluation of, will he be back, won't he be back? And that's where the Browns have to make maybe a cold decision and draft a guy. And look, if you draft a guy and JOK's back, great, now you have two really good linebackers that you can put out there. So it could end up being a win-win for him if they do that. But this is going to be an interesting spot to watch, I think, when it comes to draft night. So safety, there was obviously a little news yesterday when Juan Thornhill agreed to a contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this room is also one that I kind of look at, and there's something missing here. So right now, the names on the roster are Trey Dean, Grant Delpit, Christopher Edmonds, and Ronnie Hickman. Delpit and Hickman, obviously, the important ones. I think Delpit is a good player. He's the highest paid safety in that room. I don't know if he's necessarily that guy, but I think he's a guy that has a role on a good defense. I think he's really good in the box. He really flashed in that role towards the end of last year. Hickman has played well and earned a chance to compete, but I think this is sneakily, Mary Kay, a position where the Browns could use just a little bit more. And I wondered if they would maybe do something in free agency. They obviously haven't had much luck there. But this feels like a position where, if nothing else, those million sixth round picks they have, maybe they throw one or two at this position.
Well, I think they're very good at drafting and developing young defensive backs. It's a position that Andrew Berry played. It's a position that Kevin Stefanski played. They both played in college, and they know what they're looking at when it comes to defensive backs. They know how to evaluate them, and I think they're pretty good at that. So I think Ronnie Hickman, I think that was a great undrafted free agent signing out of Ohio State 2 years ago. I think he's someone that can come in and start to challenge for that starting job. He's a bigger hitter. They need somebody like that. I think they need an enforcer in that role. I think they need someone who can get some interceptions, who can punch the ball out a little bit. So they definitely need some big playability from their secondary. I mean, my goodness. They were last in the NFL with 4 interceptions last year. That is so unacceptable. That just can't happen again. They've got to be able to. So what if you chase the interception? Sometimes you have to do that. So they need to get more in that regard out of their defensive back. So I would be looking for some young guys that are ball hawkers. I mean, if they haven't had any interceptions in college, there might be a chance they're not going to have any in the NFL either. You really want to find guys that have a nose for the football and that have good hands as well. So I would be looking for a safety of that ilk, and I think they should be able to find one in one of those middle rounds.
Okay, before we go, I want to go back to running back. We didn't spend a ton of time on running back, but I just want to talk about this topic because it's out there. I got asked about it recently. He's still out there in free agency. Nick Chubb. At some point, do the Browns just need to say, like, hey, we're bringing you back, Nick? Like, it just feels like such an easy win for this franchise because obviously there's not a huge market developing for him. There isn't a Derrick Henry type of market for him right now, at least. I don't know, maybe one will pop up. But I just think with this draft of running backs and with teams' abilities to find a guy without having to take a chance on a Nick Chubb coming off that injury still, I don't know if that market's going to develop. And I feel like if he's willing to come back in a lesser role and you can make that work, it just feels like such an easy win for this football team.
I think so. I think it's an easy win for this football team. It's a fan base that really wants it. And sometimes you have to toss the fan base a bone. Sometimes you have to do that. This fan base has just been put through a very harrowing experience with Myles Garrett. That was stressful. That was rough. They were kind of jerked around a little bit to the point where he wanted to leave, and now all of a sudden he's back and they have to love him again, and it's difficult, it's stressful. So the one thing that we consistently know about this fan base is that it loves its Nick Chubb, and it would make them very, very happy to have him back. I get so many emails about Nick Chubb. We both get so many texts about Nick Chubb. So it would be an easy win for the club, as would probably re-signing Joe Flacco. I mean, fans would just be out of their minds if they knew they had Joe Flacco and Nick Chubb back. And it can happen. I mean, it can happen because Russ, I mean, he could end up signing with the Giants. He could end up re-signing with the Steelers. He could sign somewhere else, and they could lose Russell. That might not happen. But I think Joe has a realistic shot of ending up here if they don't get Russ. And I think he'll come at the right price, and I think fans will be excited to have him. And I've asked around a little bit, and no one seems worried at all about the thing that I've been worried about, and that is the specter or the larger-than-life presence of Joe Flacco on a sideline if your rookie quarterback starts to struggle a little bit. No one's worried about that. So I think they're going to go ahead and do it in the event they don't end up getting Russ. So I think these would be two easy victories that the Browns could get over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, and I think that's all part of this equation. I think that's part of the equation when we talk about the number 2 pick also is this team does need to sell some tickets, and this team does need to keep this fan base like engaged and give them a reason to want to come to training camp in July and August and want to go to these games and not sell their tickets and not give up their season tickets this season, because there were a lot of angry fans. And it's not the only reason you would sign a Joe Flacco. It's not the only reason you would pick a quarterback at 2. You do have to let the football people do their jobs. But at some point, the owner probably goes into Andrew Berry's office if he's not taking a quarterback at 2 and says, so what are we selling here? Like, who's our quarterback? Who's getting fans excited? What's making people want to come out to training camp and buy season tickets and all that stuff? I think that's a factor. I don't know how huge of a factor it is, but at some point, Jimmy remembers when Cody Kessler was this team's starting quarterback. He doesn't want another year like that. They need to have something at that position to get people excited.
They definitely do. And I think that fans will start to climb on board a little bit more as the Browns move forward into the draft. I think we know how Browns fans love their draft. And this is the first draft with a first-round pick since 2021. So it's just going to be much more exciting than it has in the past. And not only that, there are 10 picks. So by the end of draft weekend, potentially, the Browns could have 10 new football players that fans can get excited about. And then if you throw in a Joe Flacco or a Russell Wilson and a Nick Chubb and maybe 1 or 2 other pieces here somewhere, then I think you're starting to be onto something in terms of getting everybody back on board with this team for 2025.
Okay, there we go. Quick look at some spots on the Browns roster, some needs they might have as they enter the draft. We're about a week into free agency now, so a good chance to take a look at that. Find us on Instagram, Orange and Brown Talk. On YouTube, it's Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. You can watch full pods there. So if you don't want to just listen to us talk, you can actually watch us talk. I can't promise it's that much more exciting, but you can do it if you want. A lot of people seem to be enjoying it. So Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. You can also find us on Twitter, it's Orange Brown Talk on Twitter or X, whatever we're calling it now. And I think that's it. Oh, Football Insider, cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner at the top of the page to get signed up for that. Ashley had to take off, so she's not here. So for Mary Kay and Ashley, I'm Dan. Thanks for listening, everybody.